When I was a young boy living in the Philippines, I lived next door to a girl named Amelia. Amelia was about the same age as me. She had a slight build, long perfectly cut straight black hair that went down to the middle of her back, and skin paler than most Filipino children I knew. I remember asking my mom about her, because she looked different than all the kids I was used to playing with. My mom explained that her fairness was due to her being probably mixed, and never being allowed to play outside. This explanation made every bit of sense to me, as I realized I only saw her through the curtain of her house's left front window, and never outside playing with the other kids. The other odd thing about her was that no matter what clothes she was wearing, she always had tied around her neck in a perfect bow a beautifully kept yellow ribbon, as if her complexion and isolation from other children wasn't enough to make her stand out. No one I knew wore anything like that, especially in the Philippine heat. As my childhood rolled on, I continued to catch glimpses of Amelia, staring out at the street while me and the other neighborhood kids played. I would try waving on occasion, but that only seemed to scare her off, and I wouldn't see her again that week. The other children would call her names, and said that I would become haunted if I tried to interact with her. I brushed off their comments as my curiosity and sympathy would not let me ignore her existence. On my 6th birthday, I asked my mom if I could bring a piece of cake to Amelia's house to invite her to come over and play. My mom said that she didn't know her parents and was hesitant to send me over to a stranger's house. It was at this point I also realized I had never seen her parents come and go from the house. I begged and argued that Amelia wasn't a stranger, just a friend I hadn't been able to speak with yet. Eventually, my mom conceded and I was able to make my way to the house next door with a piece of mocha birthday cake. The house itself was a 3-story mansion of Spanish architecture. Each story had 2 large windows facing the street, and each window was covered with thick gray curtains that didn't allow a glimpse to the inside. The garden was barren, and large iron gates prevented any entrance to the sides or the back of the house. The only sign that the house was occupied was the pale-skinned girl with the yellow neck ribbon, now standing in front of the curtains of the house's left front window. I waved to announce my presence to her, and before she could disappear, I raised the plate holding the piece of cake high in the air and pointed at it excitedly. She stopped, stared for a moment, then sheepishly pointed to the large iron gate to the left of the window. I approached and realized that the gate had a small hole in it from some of the bars being rusted off. I slowly climbed through, careful not to drop my peace offering, and stood up to see a small hand waving from a partially opened window on the side of the house. I walked towards the window and came face to face with the mysterious girl that had been my neighbor all these years. She introduced herself, took the plate from my hands, smiled, and disappeared into the house. After that first meeting with Amelia, we became close friends. Every week I brought her a treat, a piece of cake, a candy, an ice block during the hotter days, and every week she would direct me to the small hole in the gate and receive my gift through a small partially opened window on the side of the house. At first, she would only say hi and thank you, but as the weeks went on, she began to tell me more about herself and her life. She was an only child to an ill mother and a foreign father. She didn't linger too long on this topic, looking visibly uncomfortable when mentioning her father. She was homeschooled by her mother, who was mostly bedridden, and so was able to stay with her all day. When I asked her why she wasn't able to go outside, she said she had to take care of her mother, which I thought was understandable. However, asking about the ribbon around her neck would end the conversations. I only asked 2 or 3 times before realizing it was not a topic up for discussion. This friendship went on for the entire year. On the night of my 7th birthday, I came back to Amelia's house, excited to regale her with stories from the outside world, and to celebrate 1 year of friendship with the same cake I had first given her. However, when I reached the metal gate, I was met with new iron bars, and no hole in sight. I doubled back to the window where Amelia would stand, and waited a few minutes before knocking gently on it. A moment passed, and then another, and just when I was about to return home, Amelia's slight frame came into view. My heart leapt with excitement, but that moment was short-lived as I noticed tears rolling down Amelia's pale cheeks. I opened my mouth to ask what was wrong, but she put her finger up to her lips to silence me. Silent and still crying, she reached behind her neck and slowly untied the bow of the yellow ribbon. My stomach dropped as I saw the ribbon fall to the ground, revealing noose of purple bruises, and in the middle of the dark ring, a thick crimson slit drawn across her porcelain neck. I stifled a scream and felt my insides retch. Amelia's tears were now rolling down her neck and into the wound, and continuing down her chest crimson red. She opened her mouth as if to apologize for startling me, but all that came out was a gurgled whisper. We both stood there crying in silence, and before I could react, she mouthed, "Thank you," and walked through the thick gray curtains and out of view. I stood there frozen for a moment before staggering back to my house in disbelief, crawling into my bed and forcing myself to believe that this was nothing but a vivid, lucid nightmare. I woke up the following morning to the sound of police cars at the front of Amelia's house. The new report stated that Amelia's mother was found dead of natural causes, but that the father had seemingly slit Amelia's throat with a box cutter before hanging himself from the 3rd-story balcony. The news story read, "Years of abuse culminating into a murder-suicide." The house became a crime scene and was inaccessible for about a week. After the police cleared out, I returned to the house to pay my respects to my lost friend. As I approached the left front window, I noticed something lying next to the shattered glass on the floor. It was a perfectly kept yellow neck ribbon. I picked it up and with tears in my eyes, said thank you, I'm sorry, and goodbye.